I would like to present Bernie. 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 Bernie.
Bennington, thank you. What a turnout. All over this country. Is everybody sick? What we're going to do this afternoon is do something very radical. You ready for something radical? Why not? We're going to practice democracy. And what you are going to do is hear from a slate of candidates who I believe are thoughtful and serious people. We're going to tell you their views on the issues and ask you for your support. But before we get to them, let me just say a few words about my assessment of what's going on in our country. My Republican friends, they suffer from a very serious illness. And unlike Donald Trump, we do not make fun of people who have disabilities. We recognize it. And the illness they suffer from is amnesia. They forgot where this country was 8 years ago. But I haven't forgotten, and you haven't forgotten. And some of you will remember that 8 years ago today, and my Republican friends never talk about this, the world's financial system was on the verge of a collapse. Remember that? The economists were literally afraid that you'd put your ATM card into the machine and nothing would come out. And that financial crisis was not limited to the United States. It was limited to including the entire world. Major financial collapse as a result of the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street. Our Republican friends kind of forget that reality. We don't, which means we are not going back to trickle-down economics and more tax breaks for billionaires and large corporations. Now, having said that, we also understand that the economy today is nowhere near where it needs to be. We understand that in the richest country in the history of the world, something is profoundly wrong when 43 million Americans live in poverty, when people in Bennington and in Burlington and all over this country are not working one job to make ends meet, they're working 2 or 3 jobs to cobble together the income and the health care they need. There is something very profoundly wrong when the United States is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all of its people. There is something profoundly wrong when we give tax breaks to billionaires, and yet we have veterans, and I want to thank the veterans community for being here this afternoon. And we have veterans who are sleeping out on the streets in America. And then the other issue that we have got to deal with is a profound moral issue. Is it acceptable that in our country today, the top 1/10 of 1% owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%? No. Is it acceptable that the Walton family, who owns Walmart, one family, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people? Is it acceptable that when we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, in the last 16 years we have seen a 10-fold increase in the number of billionaires in this country? So what you are seeing in America is, yes, our economy today is better than it was 8 years ago, but nonetheless, we have grotesque and unfair levels of income and wealth inequality. 28 million people who have no health insurance and even more who are underinsured. Hundreds of thousands of bright young people who want to get a college education but can't do that because their families cannot afford the high cost of college. And then you got millions of people leaving school with debt of $30, $50, $100,000, a debt which is plaguing them for decades. We have a child care system which is dysfunctional, which means that working moms and dads go to work, and a very large percentage of their income goes to child care if they can find decent quality, affordable child care at all. And yet in the midst of all of that, or on top of all of that, we got a global crisis of climate change and the need to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. So not only do we have an economy which is rigged, by which I mean the very, very wealthy get richer, middle class continues to shrink, and too many people live in poverty, then you got another reality. And that is we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Now maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, or maybe it's because I've lived in New England for the last 50 years. But I kind of believe that what democracy is about is one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. And this is a big issue. I think a lot of people do not know the significance of that issue, because if you're concerned about health care or the environment or women's rights or climate change, whatever it may be, education, you must be concerned about the corrupt campaign finance system that we have. Because as we speak, and I've been all over this country, as we speak, the Koch brothers and a handful of other multi-billionaires are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into negative television ads trying to elect candidates who will represent the wealthy and the powerful. And when you know that the Koch brothers are putting an ad on, know what they stand for. What these guys want to do is, they don't want to cut Social Security, they want to eliminate Social Security. They want to eliminate Medicare, they want to eliminate Medicaid, they want to eliminate federal aid to education. They want more tax breaks for the richest people on earth. So when you see these ads, that is what they want. And they are supporting candidates because those candidates will end up representing their interests. One of our most important jobs is to reinvigorate American democracy, which is why I'm so happy to see so many people here in Bennington. Because at the end of the day, the only antidote to billionaires buying elections are millions of people all over this country standing up and telling the billionaire class that in America, you are not going to get away with buying elections. The people's will prevail. Because I believe that behind me, we have a serious slate of candidates, thoughtful people who are trying to do their best, and with your help will do better, in trying to understand the real problems facing our state, because we cannot go forward unless we have the courage to look the truth in the eye. What is going on? How did we get to where we are? Where do we want to go? Do we want to end up as a nation in which a handful of billionaires control our economy and control our political life? Or do we want to end up as a state and a nation where all of our people get the health care and the education and the decent paying jobs that human beings require? He is a farmer. He has been a leader in this state in labeling GMO products. Let's welcome David Zuckerman.
Thank you, Bernie. I was given a quick note to give a shout out. There is an organization, Farm Earth Sky Time Farm, that after the event, they don't know they're feeding 700 people. They've got pizza outside at their truck after this event. So shout out to them. And really what that exemplifies is the community that we live in. How when we all work together, we make ourselves and our neighbors and our communities stronger. You know, Mary, you spoke earlier about your brothers and sisters out at Standing Rock. On my farm, my spouse Rachel's farm, we've had the opportunity so far to help send about 150, 200 pounds of food out to try to feed folks who are standing up for all of our future and against climate change. Thank you so much. But I would not have gotten involved in politics were it not for all of our hero and champion that the rest of the country has just learned about in the last year. But in 1992, when I was a student at UVM, I was awfully cynical about corporate money in politics. And this guy came along, running for re-election, spoke at UVM, and boy, was that a breath of fresh air. Bernie Sanders, thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for inspiring millions of people across this country. Thank you for returning dignity and civility to what it can mean to run for president in this country. Yes. Bernie has done so much. But what Bernie taught me, and I'm pretty sure he would feel this way, because just about every time people get up and applaud for him, he says, it's not about me. He says it's about all of us. And it's about all of us remaining involved well beyond November 8th. And that's one of the reasons I really applaud Rights and Democracy's formation and work and being a part of our revolution, because frankly, we can only do so much as we have the support of you to make it happen. And not just the support, but your engagement in the process. When issues are up, like GMOs that Bernie talked about, I fought for them for 15 years. But that didn't happen, this law did not happen in Vermont because I fought for them for 15 years. I had the honor to be your voice and meet with people all over the state, organizing, helping you find your voice and sometimes helping echo it louder. But when you called your legislators, that's what moved that issue to the top of the agenda. When people get involved, there's nothing we can't do. Marriage equality, GMO labeling, raising the minimum wage. And as we go forward, building and fighting for more affordable housing, affordable and accessible child care, prison and justice reform. Oh, we need that so badly. The war on drugs has been one of the most terrible policies from Nixon through to Reagan and beyond. That is not what we do in a dignified society. In the leading global economic society in the world, people should have affordable homes, quality education, clean, healthy food, and of course, I can't help but say in this community, clean water to drink. When the other side says we have too many regulations, you say, wait a minute, you know, regulations to protect our water, that's pretty important. Regulations to protect our air, that's pretty important. My spouse and I, when we care for our land, when the Standing Rock fight to protect their water, we recognize that we are very temporary here. We are here to care for this land so that it can feed our children, your grandchildren. It can provide the natural resources for housing and security. Those are the values we all hold dear. I am so excited to see all of you here who have these common values, and I just have to ask you before I wrap up, because I see you coming, Bernie.
Okay, our next speaker, also a candidate for legislature, is Kaya Morris.
I do want to thank everyone that's here right now, all of the candidates that are here right now. It takes great courage to run, and it takes great will to serve. Some of you may know about the attacks that have happened against myself, individuals who live down the street, who wish to do me and my family harm because of the color of my skin, because of my gender, and because of the things that I am willing to fight for. So the question you have to ask yourselves today is, if we are going to make this democracy survive, what do we do every day to push back against hatred, to push back against intimidation, to push back against lies? What are we going to do? Are we going to ensure that our poor in this community that has some of the highest rates of families in poverty in the entire state of Vermont, are not forgotten because of somebody else's political ideology that says that they are not human. We must take care of one another. We must love one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaya. Our next speaker is Steve Berry.
I also want to thank Senator Sanders. You have made it clear to this nation that the status quo is intolerable and that we must do something. And if we as citizens do not rise up and do something, we'll get more of the same. I thank you for bringing the conscience of the people back into America. Thank you, Senator Sanders. As people who seek to do our level best to bring the best qualities of our country back into the forefront. Hillary Clinton has said during the debates, America is great because America is good. What she failed to say was the next line from de Tocqueville, which is, once America stops being good, it will no longer be great. So I urge us to be good in this fight. I urge us to do our best and to lift up each other, as Michelle Obama has said, to do our very best for each other.
All over this country, there is a growing understanding that our criminal justice system is broken. And what that means is that people are asking themselves, how does it happen that in the United States we have more people in jail, 2.2 million, than any other country on earth, including China, 4 times our size? How does it happen that most of the people who end up in jail are poor, often functionally illiterate or with very poor education, disproportionately black or Latino or Native American? Does it make sense to simply build more and more jails and have more and more incarceration, or should we try to get to the root of the problem and invest in education and in jobs? Now, we have a candidate for Attorney General who I think understands this issue very well, and I think will be a great Attorney General for our state, and in fact, a leader on this issue all across the country. Please welcome T.J. Donovan.
And I want to talk about the inequality that exists in the criminal justice system. The best anti-poverty work we can do in this state is to reform our criminal justice system, period. The poor and people of color do not have a monopoly on committing crimes. But go to any courthouse, go to any jail, and that's who you overwhelmingly see. And you gotta ask yourself the question, why? Well, I'll tell you why. And I'm a prosecutor, and I'm part of this issue. Hopefully I'm part of the solution. But what has happened in this state and across this country, we have marginalized a subset of our community in the name of public safety, and it hasn't worked. We've given people, for lapses of judgment, criminal records that have kept people from employment, kept them from education, kept them from housing, and have kept them marginalized and silenced and in poverty. This is what has to change, and this is what we'll do by reforming our criminal justice system. But if we're really serious about this heroin epidemic and bringing true accountability, then let's talk about the big pharmaceutical companies that started this problem. I'm going to do it when I'm elected Attorney General. You better believe it. And when we do incarcerate in this state, it is a basic obligation of government to take care of people in their custody, and that includes prisoners. You know, there was a fellow who knew a little bit about jails, Nelson Mandela. Yeah. And he said, the true test of the character of a nation is the character of its jails. The state of Vermont should not be contracting with a for-profit private corporation to incarcerate Vermonters in the state of Michigan. Cancel the contract. This is our job. Let's do it ourselves. This is about accountability, holding ourselves accountable. Ask yourself about the outcomes in the criminal justice system. Over a 50% recidivism rate, meaning 5 out of 10 people who are in jail go back in jail. Name another state agency, name another business that fails 5 out of 10 times and stays in business. Why is it acceptable for the Department of Corrections? Why is it acceptable for our criminal justice system? Then there should never be a waiting list for somebody to get drug treatment in this state. We need treatment on demand, and we need more doctors willing to be part of the solution in treating folks who are struggling from addiction. We truly need to adopt a public health system that influences and enhances our public safety system and believes in treatment and prevention and intervention. Then we can get to accountability. We got 2 weeks to go. Let's get to work. Let's elect the Democrats. Thank you.
At the end of the day, the person who has the responsibility for representing Vermont's values is the governor of the state of Vermont. And that governor is going to have to look around her and deal with some very difficult issues, but have the courage to look at the real issues, to hear from the people. It is very easy for a candidate to say, well, I believe in limited government. That means you will not have decent health care. You will not have decent environmental protection. If you're a senior, you will not get the services that you need. If you're a worker, you will not get decent wages. What we believe is a democratic government which represents all of us, not a handful of people on the top. And it is not an easy job, and no governor can do it alone. So I hope very much that you, in the next 2 years, will be working with the person I hope becomes our next governor, Sue Minto.
Kaya, we are all here for you. We have your back, and we will not tolerate this kind of action. And your family. I want to thank you, Bernie, for really changing the course of our national conversation and for making sure that social and economic justice is now the central core to our political agenda. Bernie, I want to thank you for fighting for Main Street and not Wall Street. And I know we are here because it doesn't feel normal to be 80 degrees in late October. And that's because climate change isn't just real, it's here. And the billionaire Koch brothers are pouring millions of dollars into our state, over $2 million, to make TV ads against me and many of my brothers and sisters in the legislature. Is that the future that we want for our state? And let's mention, it isn't just Vermont. This is a national strategy. Are we going to let them buy this election? Vermont is not for sale.
Thank you, Sue.
And you would be very surprised to know all over this country how many people look to our small state and say, I wish my state were like the state of Vermont. So what we do here, when we expand healthcare, when we improve early childhood education, when we lead the country in taking on climate change and moving toward energy efficiency and sustainable energy, when we make our public colleges and universities tuition-free, when we protect a woman's right to choose, when we do all of those things and more, we not only improve life for the 630,000 people in Vermont, we become an example to the rest of the country of what democracy must be.
Our job is to elect every one of these candidates on Election Day. Thank you all very much. So their job and your job is to participate actively in the political process. They can't represent you unless you are not vocal in telling them what your needs are and what your ideas are for the future of this country. We got a very important election on November 8th, and I hope that everybody up here wins. But November 9th is also an important day because you have got to continue your participation in the political process. The gentleman I'm going to introduce in a second does not have a sexy job. And a lot of people don't even know what he does. But what he does and his voice is enormously important, not only here in the state of Vermont, but all over this country. Because one of the crises that we face is that all over this country we have cowardly Republican governors who do not have the guts to run for office based on their ideas. What they win and try to win elections on is by suppressing the vote, by making it hard for poor people or people of color or old people or young people to get registered to vote and to come out to vote. So what they are saying to people all over this country, you need a photo ID, you need a driver's license. Well, what happens if I don't own a car? Well, you can go get a government ID card for $50 across town. But what happens if I'm old and I can't get across town? Or maybe I don't have the $50. It is very clear that all over this country, there are people who are trying to undermine American democracy by preventing American citizens from voting. And one of the leaders in opposition to that trend, not only here in Vermont, but all across this country, is our Secretary of State, Jim Kondos. Please welcome Jim.
From certain candidates, sensationalized reporting that are sowing seeds of doubt, specifically about rigged elections and voter fraud. And we take those allegations about rigged elections very seriously. I'm confident in my own team and the work that we've done with our IT security staff, with law enforcement, town clerks all across the state to protect the integrity of our elections. I can assure you that those precautions are active and constant. We are on high alert. We're working with both the FBI and Homeland Security to stay ahead of it. You need to understand there is no rigged election because our systems are decentralized. When you go vote in your local town and you put your ballot into that vote tabulator, remember two things. One, you voted on a ballot, and we're going to keep that ballot sealed in a bag for 22 months. That tabulator that counts that ballot is not connected to the internet in any way, by hardwire, by Wi-Fi, not in any way. It's a self-contained unit, and that is all its function, is the ballots in that location.
I would like to thank Brad and Senator Sanders for raising up our water protectors who are in constant threat and danger and standing with us. And it's interesting because we have an expression where we usually start any conversation with the group that translates to all my relations. And you are all my relations because we are all brothers and sisters in this struggle. And no one knows that better than Rad and Senator Sanders. So I want to say Hilamayaye, which is thank you, to everybody here.